Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Hi, I'm Ashley, a true crime fanatic.
I'm Dan, and I don't know anything about true crime.
Together, we host Fuck That, a true crime podcast that covers cases that highlight important topics that are often overlooked, such as wrongful convictions, domestic violence, and social inequities, sprinkled in with the occasional case with spooky themes. If you are looking for your next true crime fix delivered candidly with a hint of sarcasm, you can listen and subscribe to bi-weekly episodes of Fuck That wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook and Twitter at @FThatPod and at @FThat_pod on Instagram.
Devil is on his way, devil is on his way, devil is on his way, motherfucker, the devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees, devil is on his way. Fall to your knees, devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees, devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey Dylan, how's it going?
I'm just hanging in here.
Hanging in there. Well, that's a good thing. Apologies, we did miss or skip a sometime this week episode. Got caught up this past week. We were both kind of busy. I'm back in school. You had a lot going on with work, and then it's spring break, so my son's in town. Had to gear up for that.
A little bit of life happening.
Yeah, we're excited though. This weekend we are going to drive him home, so that means we get a little vacation, which is much needed.
Yeah, I
It'd be
can't
nice
wait.
to get out of town. We're going to head to Michigan. Always a good time. Looking forward to that. Let's not dilly-dally, Dylan. We have a lot to talk about. And I mentioned that we skipped our sometime this week. But if you are just champing at the bit for some extra content, don't forget our Patreon. That's patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast. We just posted a brand new episode over there last week on Melissa Turner. She is a former cosplayer caught up in a murder.
That was such a wild story.
It's a wild story, right? So definitely want to check that out. If you've ever thought about supporting the show, now is a good time, Dylan. All right, are you ready? Let's get into today's case. Before we get started, I thought I would mention my resources, all newspaper articles.
Oh, so when you say that, I know that means that it was kind of tough to find information about this story.
It was, and I'm actually really surprised there is no book on this case. Because it's kind of I think it's a pretty interesting story, and I just can't believe there hasn't been an author out there take this story and turn it into a full-length true crime book.
Right.
So some of my resources for today, I said we use a lot of newspapers for this case. We have the Greenville News, the Columbia Record, the State, Sun News, again, the Columbia Record, that one comes up quite a bit. The Herald, the Anderson Independent Mail, and these are all the Index Journal. These are all publications in South Carolina. Florence Morning News. And guess what? Our case takes place in South Carolina.
I never would have guessed.
Just 20 minutes from Charleston, South Carolina, lies the idyllic town of Folly Beach. Oceanfront homes protected by sand dunes on a 6-mile-long barrier island. Look out at waves crashing against miles of beachfront. Dylan, it's my dream.
It sounds lovely.
It's very lovely, yes. I would love to have a beach house here. This would be my dream. I would live there all the time. You'd never, ever, 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 ever drag me off the beach, ever. So during the Civil War, Folly Island was a staging area from which Union troops attempted to take back Charleston from the Confederacy. So it has a rich history, much like just most of the state of South Carolina.
Yeah, there's a ton of history that happened in South Carolina in various times, right?
Folly Beach is a small town with a population of just over 2,000, but when our story takes place, it was less than 1,000 people populating the island, like full-time residents. During the summer season, it is cherished by tourists. In the 1970s, the main street housed surf shops, souvenir stores, and restaurants catering to summer crowds. An iconic historic lighthouse protected the point to the north. Many of the homes along the beach, built on stilts to protect them from blowing sand, were unoccupied for most of the winter months and used for vacation homes in the summer. So
Yeah.
got a lot of those stilt houses.
Yeah, and you see those all over the coast, no matter where you go, right? It seems to be a very common construction in those types of areas.
In late May of 1973, the Latimer family busily cleaned their beach house on Arctic Avenue, getting it ready for the upcoming summer season. In the late afternoon, 13-year-old Alexis Latimer asked her mother if she and her best friend, 14-year-old Sherry Clark, could take one more stroll down the beach before they returned home to Charleston. I'm jealous. I mean, imagine you live in Charleston, but you also have a beach house.
You're right.
Folly Beach.
So you're in this beautiful city of Charleston, on the coast as well, all this rich history,
Yep.
great food,
Oh, yeah.
and then you have a beach house too.
So nice.
Yeah.
The dream. Her mother agreed as long as she was home before dark. The two girls ran over the long boardwalk that crossed the dunes at the back of the house, and it led to the expansive sand that seemed to extend, on for miles. Mrs. Latimer watched as the girls disappeared into the horizon, not knowing it would be the last time she would see her daughter.
My God.
When darkness fell on Folly Beach, Mary Latimer knew something was wrong. It wasn't like the girls to be out after dark, so the family searched the beach, but there were no signs of these teenage girls. When they called the police to report the girls missing, they were met with resistance. At 13 and 14 years old, the tiny police force in the town told the panic-stricken parents that the girls had most likely run off with some boys.
I see this every time.
This is such a 70s
Yes.
story.
A 13 and 14-year-old girl are missing.
Yes.
Oh, well, they must have run away. I mean, I just don't get it.
I'm not sure, but back in the day, we've heard this time and time again. Law enforcement did not take missing persons cases very seriously, and especially when it's young people.
But I'm saying it's like none of them have family or friends or kids of their own. Like, you would be worried if you know your kid, if they've gone for a short walk or just to hang out for a little while, and now it's after dark. It's only natural to be very concerned.
Well, it's not that this kind of thing can't happen. I mean, those of us who have kids, and especially teenagers, know sometimes maybe they do break curfew. They might, it's very possible they might have met some new friends. It could have been some boys. Maybe they were just sort of taking their sweet time to get home, lost track of time, whatever. But as the hours stretch on, and your child still hasn't returned home, it's kind of one thing if your kid's 10, 15, even 20 minutes late. But when hours pass,
right,
3, 4, 5 hours, that's not a good sign.
Well, and my point is, if they did run off with some boys,
You
quote
should
unquote,
probably find them.
I still want your help looking for them.
Yeah, I want you to locate my children, yes. Now, despite the families insisting that they knew their daughter and her friend would never run away, the police told them there was nothing they could do until they were gone for more than 2 weeks.
That's the longest time period I've ever heard.
2 weeks, Dylan.
2 weeks.
In the true crime world, in the crime world, 2 weeks is like a lifetime.
So if they haven't returned in about 35 years, you get back to us and we'll look for them. 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
These are children.
Yes.
It's not like they're 17-ish, one of them's driving. It's none of that. It's 2 girls walking.
And it's such a small island
Yeah.
that it wouldn't take a lot of effort for law enforcement to drive around, ask around, try to scope out the area looking for these girls.
That's ridiculous.
Right? Well, the parents of both girls were angry and upset naturally that their daughters were labeled as runaways. Wanting to not waste any precious time, the family spent endless hours searching the sand dunes up and down the coastline. They even placed ads in several newspapers offering $1,000 for any information leading to the girls' safe return. Unfortunately, Dylan, days turned into weeks and the 2 girls had simply vanished. When police finally started looking for the girls, precious time had been wasted. Police looked through incident reports for anything out of the ordinary that might have happened during the time the girls went missing, but they were left with no clues at all. Again, maybe don't wait 2 weeks to take it seriously, right?
Like what's the point after 2 weeks? Seriously.
It's a vacation town.
Yeah, people are in and out.
The season is about to start up. Come March, at the time of our story, that's like spring break starts happening. That's when people start kind of coming into town. They're coming and going. It's transient. If someone did see something, they've probably forgotten or maybe they've already left town.
Yeah.
So frustrating. These types of cases frustrate me to no end. Months went by, and the families of the two girls were losing hope about finding them alive. Mary Latimer, desperate for answers, even went as far as sending a letter to a psychic in the Netherlands named Gerard Croiset. She had read about him in the newspaper. Croiset had received media attention for assisting in several missing persons cases. Despite a success rate of a little more than chance guesses, she contacted him with high hopes. Croiset wrote back to Mary Latimer with a hand-drawn map that roughly outlined the coastline of Folly Beach. He told the already grieving mother that he believed her daughter was somewhere along the coastline, but she was already dead.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. You really can't trust these psychics. There's really not any evidence that a psychic has ever helped solve a case.
No, I mean,
They mostly just interfere.
Yes, and a lot of times they, when they reach out to families, they're just there, in my opinion, to manipulate and gain clout, if you will, or some financial gain on their part. And, sometimes you'll hear of a vaguely similar description once, the bodies or the remains are found or anything like that. But, I mean, come on.
The U.S. Air Force was contacted and even flew planes over Folly Beach using some kind of experimental technology, which scanned the coastline with infrared light, trying to look for these girls. But they, too, came up empty-handed. So on Saturday, September 19th of 1973, a 19-year-old woman met a sailor at a party at the local naval base in Charleston. After some conversation, the woman invited the sailor back to her apartment in North Charleston. With no warning, the sailor savagely attacked the woman. He pushed her to the floor. The woman fought back, but with little success. She was tied to the bed. Afterward, he undressed, watching the woman try to wriggle out of her restraints. Realizing she had little options, the victim said to him, quote, "Well, if all you want is a piece of, come on. I've got things to do and places to go."
Damn. Well, I mean, obviously you're in survival mode at this point. And, what a terrifying event this would be, You've been incapacitated. This person's disrobing, just watching you like a damn predator. I mean, this would be so scary.
Well, at this, the man suddenly lost his erection.
Because it's not about just sex, right? We all know that. It's about the power, the control.
He quickly left the room, and she could hear him dressing in the next room, and then soon after, he left the apartment. The woman was somehow able to free herself and filed a complaint with naval authorities. They encouraged the victim to file a report with local law enforcement, but the woman dropped the matter, and we'll kind of get more into that in a little bit. Now, by this time, we've got 9 months had passed, and there have been no leads to the whereabouts of Alexis Latimer and Sherry Clark until the evening of February 12th, 1974, when a girl frantically called the police. The teenage girl told police she had been near the James Island Shopping Center when she was threatened by a man. He pointed a gun at her, forced her into a wooded area behind the mall, and placed a noose around her neck. The man threw the other end of the rope around a tree branch and began to pull the rope taut when she heard someone walking through the woods. That's when the man dropped the rope and ran, so the girl started screaming for help.
Damn.
The young girl was terrified and shaken up, but she was safe. She sat down with a police sketch artist and described her attacker as best she could. He was a white male in his late 20s or early 30s with dark hair, possibly of Italian descent, and he had a mustache. It was Luigi. The composite drawing was posted throughout the town and placed in local newspapers with hopes that someone might recognize the attacker. Within a few days, they had a possible sighting. A man who fit the description was said to have been seen in a shopping center parking lot exposing himself to young girls. We got a flasher.
So this person is just out of control, and they keep having these close calls and getting away.
They're like they're a total sexual deviant. One of the flasher's victims got a few letters from his license plate, and police quickly arrested the suspect. Law enforcement was confident the flasher and the man who threatened to kill the young girl at the shopping center were one and the same. Yet, when the girl viewed a lineup of 6 men, she was not certain that any of these men were her attacker.
So no positive ID on the lineup.
Yeah. Just days later, on February 20th, a tragedy struck again. 16-year-old Mary Erlene Bunch left a friend's house in Folly Beach and began walking home, and it was just 2 blocks away, Dylan, but disappeared into thin air. Mary Bunch was the daughter of a former Folly Beach police chief, Julian Bunch, and so, of course, police sprang into action to look for this girl without hesitation.
So they didn't wait 2 weeks?
They didn't wait 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Interesting how that happens, huh? Now, the stark difference in reaction obviously upset the Latimer family, who were still reeling with anger because of law enforcement's slow response to Alexis and Sherry's disappearance. Although they began their searches just hours after Mary went missing, it made no difference. She was gone without a trace. Just weeks later, another young girl reported that she had been grabbed while on the streets of Folly Beach. The man had attempted to drag her toward the beach, but luckily she was able to break free and run to freedom. Scary stuff.
Yeah, and it's crazy that it's happening in this community that's not a very
large. So
small and contained, right? I mean, if you had cops out in, full-on vigilant mode, watching everything, checking any suspicious activities, you likely would run across this person.
One would think. And you've also got to realize, this is a tourist town. They're heavily dependent on tourism, those dollars coming in. So this kind of story could really damage the season.
Well, yeah.
Which would mean, a lot of people would be out of work and or their businesses would suffer as well. So it's pretty scary.
Well, yeah, if I hear of that there's been multiple attacks on young people, young girls in an area, that's going to be the last place I take my family to vacation.
Right. Well, the very next day, 3 16-year-old girls visiting from nearby Somerville were walking along Folly Beach when a mustachioed man, I just love to say that, in his 30s approached them. He had several pieces of cloth draped over his arm, which they thought was very strange. Beneath the fabric, the girls could see he was pointing a handgun at them. The man instructed the girls to walk down the beach toward an abandoned beach house. With the gun pointed at their backs, he forced the girls beneath the cottage. Like every beach house in that area, it was elevated on pilings, with the space beneath enclosed only by narrow wooden slats with gaps kind of between them, like lattice work.
Okay.
Right? This allowed the sand and water to wash through kind of underneath while providing some cover and storage space. So the man directed the girls to this outdoor shower area in the space beneath the abandoned home. He gagged each girl and tied their hands and feet behind their backs using a white nylon clothesline and strips of ripped up bedspread that he had brought along with him. Then, with the girls lying on their stomachs, he hog-tied the foot and hand bindings behind their backs. As the girls struggled against their bindings, the man set the gun on the floor. It was then that one of the girls noticed the sound the gun made when it touched the concrete. It wasn't metal, it was plastic. It had only been a toy.
Damn. So it's a fake gun.
It's a fake gun. I mean, that's pretty ballsy to abduct someone with a fake gun.
Yeah, I agree.
Just as the sun was setting, one of the girls looking through the slatted wood walls of the shower area noticed a car pull up in front of the house. And by this time, the man had like left them there. She recognized that this was a police car. An officer had stopped to check on some surfers. The girl frantically pushed the gag out of her mouth with her tongue and screamed. And by the time the policeman ran to the back of the house and entered the shower area, the attacker was nowhere around. Like, he walked off for a few seconds. That's when she screams, and now he's gone for good. So I don't know if he'd already left and was leaving them there, or if, like, he just went around the corner, heard her scream,
right,
got scared. I'm not really sure. When the girls were questioned by investigators, they gave virtually the same description that the previous girl had provided, that this man had dark hair, an Italian look, and a mustache.
A mustachio.
However, they had noticed a few more details, Dylan. The man had a noticeable scar on his ankle, and he wore stringless Velcro tennis shoes, which at the time, Velcro was kind of like a new technology. Not a lot of tennis shoes had Velcro.
So this was a cool thing at that point.
Maybe.
Or different. It's different.
It's different. I was going to say, I don't know if Velcro's ever been cool unless you're 6 years old and you've got a pair of Roos. Remember the Roos?
Well, I must say, I think it's come full circle for us adults. Now you're seeing a lot of tennis shoe brands, the laceless, you kind of step into your shoes. I have a pair of Adidas, which actually fit great, and I don't have to mess with laces. And
okay, Grandpa.
There's no Velcro. It's not New Balance.
Okay, Grandpa.
They're sporty. They're
Sure,
for the gym.
Sure they are. You keep telling yourself that.
They're really comfortable.
Yes.
And I don't have to bend over to put them on.
Aren't they like orthopedic or something?
No.
I make fun, but I totally have a pair of Vans that have ortho-light technology. So they're basically orthopedic Vans, and they're super comfortable.
The fact that Vans makes that,
Yeah.
it says a lot.
What does it say?
That the people in the Vans are we're aging.
That we're a certain generation and that we're
Yes.
getting old. Yes. So again, police alert the media of this attack and publish the composite sketch. But 4 days later, they would sadly begin to find out what had happened to the missing girls. On April 16th, a man who regularly walked his dog along the beach noticed that his dog was dragging him to some sand dune and had begun digging. The dog had done this for several days in a row at the same spot, but this time the man noticed something. As the dog dug deeper into the sand, he spotted something dark kind of underneath, right? Knowing that the 3 girls had gone missing, he got a little freaked out and decided he was not the one that was going to find a dead body today, so instead he called police.
So he didn't investigate further. He drug his dog away.
He did.
And
He's
straight to the cops.
He said, nope, I'm not the one. Now, within an hour, investigators had contacted the city manager, who arrived at the beach with a small bulldozer. After several hours of digging, they unearthed the decomposed body of Mary Bunch. The girl's hands and feet had been bound with white nylon rope, the same that had been used in the abduction of the 3 girls from Somerville. Her identity was later confirmed using dental records.
So it's a horrible discovery.
Horrible discovery. And on top of it, Dylan, I'm curious, like, if it's a big sand dune, you need like a bulldozer to dump the sand? How?
Well, I mean, I guess maybe the sand's fault, but I mean, the dog was uncovering it. So, I mean, it's kind of weird, but we don't know all the logistics of it. Maybe the sand's falling back in. Maybe that's how long it took for them to find all the remains. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing I wasn't really sure about. Now, the following day, after the news that the body of Mary Bunch had been found, a 19-year-old girl from Mount Pleasant, which is like basically North Charleston, walked into the Folly Beach Police Department and told detectives that she too had been attacked by the man in the composite drawing. Now, this is the woman who met this man at the naval base.
So this was a sailor attack.
The sailor attack. Now, she hadn't reported it at the time because she'd been drinking and was underage. But now she knew a young girl had been killed and 2 other girls were missing, so she came forward.
And she had an extended contact with this person, so her information could be very valuable.
So this young woman knew her attacker, Dylan. She had been attacked by him the previous year when she had taken him to her apartment. And although she had been tied up in a similar fashion as the girls from Somerville, she had managed to escape. Now, she told detectives that recently she had attended a party at the 6th District Naval Base in Charleston, which was attended by many Navy sailors stationed at the base. Without drawing attention, the girl asked another sailor who was actually like one of the Navy's MAs, like a military police, for the man's name. And the officer told her the man's name was Richard Raymond Valenti and informed the girl that she should contact Folly Beach Police Department to report that this attack had happened. Now, she expressed regret to the detectives for having waited so long before coming forward with Valenti's name. 31-year-old Richard Valenti was a petty officer and worked on the submarine rescue vessel, the USS Petrel, as a radar expert. He lived with his wife and three children, just 2 houses away from the vacant beach home on Arctic Avenue in Folly Beach. So he lives not far from where Alexis Latimer's family had a home.
Right.
And he's only 2 houses away from where he had taken those 3 teenage girls.
I mean, how in the world?
Well, you know, Dylan, they say don't shit where you were or you live, right? Don't shit where you eat kind of thing.
I mean, the fact that you can have a family, I honestly think these people that have wives and families and are doing these things are almost scarier than the lone wolf weirdo guy who has nobody. Because the fact that they can go do this and then come home and sit down and eat dinner with their kids is really so creepy to me.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. 9 police officers closed in on the apartment that Valenti rented at, kind of like in this cottage. Before they even had a chance to walk up the steps, Valenti greeted them at the door and invited them in as if he were expecting them, like they were just dinner guests.
Oh, yeah. Hey, cops. Come on in.
Now, except for a freshly shaven face, Valenti matched the composite drawings and descriptions perfectly. Sharon Valenti, his wife, politely offered the officers coffee while the 3 children played on the floor. Showing no emotion, Valenti agreed to accompany the officers to Charleston for questioning, but asked if he could pick up his Bible before they left.
Oh, yeah. Yes, because I love to read my Bible whilst being questioned by police.
Right? As they drove
because I'm a holy man. I just want you to know I love my Bible so much that I would never hurt anyone.
I mean, anytime somebody tries to pretend I'm a good person, I wouldn't do this because they got caught. I mean, come on.
Anytime someone keeps reminding me that they're religious, I automatically don't trust them because truly good, religious people don't act like that. They don't have to keep talking about it. You know what I'm saying?
Now, as some officers drove to Charleston with Valenti in tow, other law enforcement searched the home and found some strange items, Dylan.
Okay.
Like some Velcro tennis shoes under the bed. They were the same shoes that the Somerville girls had described. Officers also found a bed sheet that had been ripped and several magazines and glossy photos of women who were bound and gagged. In custody, detectives immediately charged him with assault and intent to ravish for the attack on the woman from North Charleston. When asked about Mary Erlene Bunch, Sherry Clark, and Alexis Latimer, Valenti quickly admitted that he had killed all 3 of them and even offered to take detectives to the graves of Sherry and Alexis.
Damn, it's like he was just waiting for someone to come ask.
Yeah, which is also disturbing. Just before 10 p.m., Valenti had detectives and officers with shovels and lanterns at the vacant beach house on Arctic Avenue. So this is the same one where he had taken the 3 other victims that managed to get away. As they walked under the house, he led them to the shower area. Valenti then pointed to the pipes that ran through the support beams of the house. And Dylan, this gets really disturbing. He told them this is where he had hung the victims. He then walked them to the sand dunes behind the house next door, which was at 905 Arctic Avenue, and pointed to a mound of sand. There, officers recovered 2 female skeletons beneath 2.5 feet of sand. Both lay face down with their heads toward the ocean, rope still tied around their necks. Both had braces on their teeth, sorry, and rolled up folds of flesh around their necks from being hanged. A necklace, ring, and earrings were later identified as belonging to Alexis and other jewelry belonging to Sherry. When detectives returned Valenti to the county jail, he was charged with 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of assault with intent to kill, and 1 charge of assault with intent to ravish. Again, this is pretty disturbing, so we have to talk about it. Now, Valenti explained that he had seen Alexis and Sherry walking on the beach that afternoon and said he had had an urge that he just could not contain. He ran home, grabbed a toy gun, rope, and ripped up some bed sheets and then returned to the beach. He forced the girls under the vacant house and ordered them to take their clothes off. He made them pose for him in suggestive sexual positions, then tied their hands and feet. He forced them to stand on a chair while he placed long strips of bedsheet around their necks, the opposite ends connected to the water pipes above. Valenti claimed he didn't kick the chairs away, but instead he watched the victims struggle and panic against the bindings, trying to free themselves. Their struggle, however, caused the chairs to fall. He told detectives that he watched the girls panic as they choked to death.
So, I mean, you're trying to act like you didn't intentionally hang them or something? Come on. You created this entire scenario.
Why does the cat get the zoomies every time we sit down to record?
I don't know.
She is on one right now. Valenti said part of him wanted to help them, but he also found himself unable to move. Valenti explained that Mary Bunch had died similarly. He took her below the vacant house, hog-tied her, then tied a clothesline around her neck. Rather than hang her, he laid her face down, sat on her back, and slowly pulled the rope, strangling her to death. Valenti went into detail with detectives about his deviant sexual fetish for binding and gagging women. He explained that it gave him an unexplainable emotional satisfaction to dominate and have these women under his total control. He said that his fascination with ropes and binding began when he was a small child.
It's so disgusting. You know, it's one thing to be into something with other consenting people, but this is where it gets dark. This is the dark side of a fetish.
The trial for the murders of Sherry Clark and Alexis Latimer began in early June of 1974. On the second day of trial, Valenti took the stand and claimed he had no recollection of his taped admission of guilt or signing a 5-page confession letter. He claimed his emotions were so high that he had no memory of any of it, like at all. I just don't remember. I forgot.
Yeah, I don't remember completely confessing and showing them where the bodies were.
The tape was played for the jury. In it, Valenti sounded calm and collected as he explained how he had killed the girls. His voice was emotionless as he told how he had stared at the girls while they hung from the water pipes and how he had carried the bodies next door. He had dug a grave to bury them, and that the grave was visible from his own apartment window, which was only a few houses away.
So he could look out the window.
Yeah, I was going
to
to say, because he's a sicko who got off on looking out the window at these graves.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that's not a coincidence.
Valenti's wife, Sharon, cried as she listened to her husband talk about his urges to bind and kill women. Sharon took the stand and told the jury of her husband's deviant sexual desires. She said she knew of his sexual domination fetish with ropes, bindings, and gags. Sharon admitted that she had participated in this, quote, fetish and allowed him to bind and gag her. But she told the court she felt like it, quote, wasn't normal and didn't, but also didn't think it was that dangerous.
Well, yeah, but the problem is it didn't go far enough for him, you know? So having his wife participate in this, even if she's a less than willing participant, let's be honest, that wasn't enough for him, right?
Sharon had encouraged her husband to seek help from a therapist or a psychiatrist, but he insisted there was nothing wrong with him, that this was a normal thing.
Yeah, this is how people have sex.
Yeah.
just get my toolbox.
Now, Dylan.
Get those pulleys.
I'm going to bring this axe in the room. Now, this is totally normal.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Well, I want to cut your pinky toe off while we have sex.
Yes. Just stay still. You know it hurts less if you don't struggle.
Now, I wonder, have you ever had a sexual partner offer up...
a pinky toe?
No. Just try to get you to do something that you felt was rather outlandish.
Probably not.
No one's ever like blown you away with the request.
No, not really.
Oh my God, you're into all of it.
Yeah.
Damn,
Nothing shocking.
You old freak.
Bring it on. No, not really.
Okay.
Why? Have you?
No.
Nobody was ever like, take a dump on my face.
No.
Ew. No.
Well, I mean, I take long dumps anyway, so that would be weird. It'd get old after about 30 minutes, you know.
Oh, okay.
Be scrolling through TikTok and just waiting for a little turd to come out.
Ah! What is wrong with you? Okay.
Right on their little face. And
Stop.
they're
Okay.
like, I want more. But like, well, I don't know if I got more, you know.
You need to put some fiber in your diet. What is wrong with you? Eat an apple. Damn, Dylan.
I do.
Okay. Let's move along.
All right.
Let's move along. On the recorded confession, Valenti had told detectives that he had, in fact, tied his wife up several times, but he received no pleasure from it because he could tell she wasn't scared.
Exactly. That's the one victim was like, let's just do it then. And that totally ruined the moment for him because that's what it was all about.
He needed a real victim to quell these desires. Richard Valenti's defense team tried to convince the jury that he was insane, and he had been brought up by a very disturbed family, and they used the age-old excuse, Dylan, that he had a very dominating mother. They stated that his fetish was brought on by his mother's control and domination over him as a child. Valenti claimed his mother often tied him up when he was a boy. Now, after 4 days of trial and only 55 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on 2 counts of murder. He was immediately given 2 life sentences to be served consecutively. Richard Valenti never faced trial for the murder of Mary Bunch. Detectives were aware that, given Valenti's intense obsession, it was improbable that these were his first victims. However, after thoroughly investigating his previous military assignments and the time he had spent at his hometown, which was in Massachusetts, and I'm not even going to pretend I know how to pronounce the name of the city, so we'll just say he's from Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't want to give you guys any more fodder to think that, I can't read good. So they couldn't identify any other potential crimes that he may have committed, but they still felt like he had done this before.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was thinking, too. Like, how many victims does this guy really have?
Now, 46 years later, following 20 parole denials, in December of 2020, Richard Valenti finally died in prison following a long illness, and I hope it was a painful one.
Yeah, me too. This guy was a real monster.
I had to mention this, though, Dylan. There was kind of a kerfluffle back in 1986 where Valenti's name was back in the news. People had kind of forgotten about this creep. And then he was back in the news again. And, of course, local residents were like, we don't want to hear from this guy. We hate him. Fuck him. So in 1986, Charleston legislators were pretty upset to learn that the leader of an anti-crime organization group was engaged to Valenti. This crime organization was called Concerned Citizens for Action. And they had really taken up this cause of pushing for victim advocacy, They wanted community penalties like public works to be put in place rather than like prison time.
Okay.
And they believed there should be these rehab centers for nonviolent offenders, and there should be a reform of the parole release system. So they've gotten the attention of lawmakers, and they're kind of making a big stink. But then it turns out that one of the organizers, like the main leader of the group, named Patricia Barfield, was engaged to Richard Valenti.
Which has to be one of the worst offenders from that area ever.
Yeah. So Mrs. Barfield worked as a prison psychologist and a prison volunteer.
Oh, she's like a trashy Harley Quinn.
Yeah. Leaders suggested that she probably was just like maybe a not as fashionable Harley Quinn.
Right.
Yeah. Leaders suggested that Mrs. Barfield's association with the group and push for reform was simply because of her relationship with Richard Valenti. The group was opposed to a crime bill that was currently being circulated in the South Carolina General Assembly. The bill would stiffen sentences for violent offenders. So with this information coming out, the group lost support from all the legislators that had once kind of given them some attention.
Good.
Were interested in what they had to say. And so, yeah.
That was kind of a scandal.
They kind of gave her a big middle finger and were like, Richard Valenti's going to die in prison.
Well, they should have, because she's engaged to this monster who killed and abused all these young girls. I mean, how do you look past that?
Well, I just don't know how anybody can advocate for the release of someone who is so violent, because this guy's a serial killer.
And it's connected to these urges that he himself says he can't control, so there's no way he won't do it again.
I'll never understand, like, why you would argue in favor of a violent offender being released, or how you even get to a point where you're engaged to someone like this.
And I have to say, I agree with you. I'm surprised there's not more books and things like that about this guy, because he's pretty horrific. I mean, honestly.
No, it's terrible. And considering, this area, I mean, this is probably like the only serial killer ever in the Folly Beach area.
Right.
And he was a sailor. I mean, you just kind of hold people in the military maybe to like a higher standard. They're serving their country. You think like, okay, this is a person with ethics and honor. And then you find out they're like a serial killer. I mean, that's... wow, right?
I'm glad he died. I just wish he had died earlier on.
What a painful and horrific way. I mean, he tortured these girls.
Yeah, there's no way around it.
And their poor families, spending all that time like not knowing what happened. And then when they learned the truth, I mean, I can't imagine that had to be such a devastating blow.
Well, and they let their kids go walking in an area I'm sure they considered safe, right? And it was safe, except for this one monster hiding next door, basically.
What a creep.
So
you live
disgusting.
in this apartment with your family and your kids, and you have a grave within your purview from the bathroom window or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you sit in there? They didn't have TikTok back then, so he just sits in the on the toilet looking out the window at like the graves because he's a weirdo.
So sick.
So sick.
Well, Heather, thank you for that. I'd certainly never heard of this story.
Well, yeah, I'd never really heard of this case either, but once I started digging in, I was intrigued and curious why we've not heard more about Richard Valenti.
Richard Valenti, the Folly Beach killer.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for sitting down to record with me, Dylan.
Thank you.
Don't forget to check out our webpage, mountainmurderspodcast.com. You can listen to the podcast directly from the website. You can also access our merch store. We have some cute new designs, some fun stuff, so make sure you check that out. Dylan, you have anything you want to say? Don't do it. Don't do it.
Well, I think the listeners know how I feel about them in regards to them, this podcast, and what state that the podcast finds them. Happy, fed,
hungry,
safe.
No. Okay. Bye, Dylan.
Bye.